Hey everybody. So in setting up this video today, I had a number of topics in mind that maybe I wanted to discuss. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go, but I decided that I'd like to do a video on the unhealthy type 6. I mentioned that in my last video that I did on the 4's integration to 1. I wanted to talk a little bit about type 6 and the unhealthy 6. And I talk a little bit about type 6 in my video 4 versus type 6. But the reason I wanted to talk about the unhealthy 6 is because I have had some, I don't know if I'd say opportunity, but I've actually witnessed a number of 6s, but 2 specifically. I had more than that, okay? So I've actually worked with a number of unhealthy 6s, and one whom I know for sure took the test and confirmed she was a 6. Another one, I know that's what he was. He fit the description completely. And just other people from my past who I've thought about, I'm like, yeah, they fit that. And notably, okay, so what is it about the type 6 when they disintegrate? They say the 6s go to 3. So I had this coworker who was a self-preservation 6-wing 7, and she was very warm and she was counterphobic, and she actually took the Enneagram and she confirmed she was a 6. She couldn't believe it. She says, I'm such a 6, and she hated being a 6. She says, I wish I wasn't a 6. I wish I was an 8. I said to her, well, why do you want to be an 8? And she said, well, it'd be nice to have so much control, because then I'd be in control. And I said, well, why do you want to be in control? Well, then I wouldn't have to worry so much. And I said, okay, so right there, your motives are 6 driven, right there. So you can't be an 8, because she'd asked me, can you change your Enneagram? I said, no, you can't. And it's not good to emulate some other type. Say, I'm going to be like this type or that type. You are who you are. And every single type has their positives, and every single type has many negatives, as the Enneagram focuses on a lot of negatives. Now, she was unfortunately very unhealthy in her sixness. What I've noticed about unhealthy 6s is that they can have a tendency to hang around with what I call, for lack of a better term, scummy people. So she felt this loyalty to these people who were just scumbags. They were users, they were abusers. She had a friend who would regularly text her and call her terrible names, and she would forgive this friend. It's like, oh, no big deal. Yeah, she's a bitch, but whatever. And she had a boyfriend who, people from her life, whether boyfriends or friends, they were just abusers. She would let people live in her house, take advantage of her, all out of the sake of loyalty. And I remember telling her, I'm like, if these people cost you your livelihood, your job, your well-being, they're not friends. Okay, this isn't a friend if this person is costing you this. And at one time she told me that this is an interesting aspect with regards to 6 and dynamic and how they feel about people when they're unhealthy. I found that they tend to side with those who are more like the lower end people, like as they say, the 6s side with the underdog. They tend to gravitate there. But then if you are trying to help to pull them out, like say, look, you're better than this, they resent you. It's really strange. But yet they'll use their association with knowing you up here to feel better than above them down here. Okay, so let me give some examples. Maybe what I just said was really vague. So this person I knew, she was in a relationship with a guy who was actually beating her up. I mean, she came into work all the time disheveled, and one time she had a patch on her eye and a black eye and this and that, and she was clearly with this low-level scumbag who'd been in and out of jail or whatever. And another friend of mine who's a type 2, spoke to this 6 and said, you need to drop these people. And she actually went the extra step. This is her being a 2, to contact the 6's sister and say, look, she's in with this relationship, he's an abuser, blah, blah, blah. Now, instead of the 6, being whatever, appreciative or recognizing that the 2 was trying to be a friend, the 6 felt that the 2 betrayed her. How could you go and tell my sister this? And when the 2 was just trying to tell this sister that the 6 was with an abuser. So technically the 2 was being a good friend. She was warning the sister, like, look, she's being brainwashed. She's being abused. Something needs to be done. Okay? So it was funny because when I was speaking with the 6, and I'm just going to call her the 6 because I don't want to use names. So I was speaking with the 6. The 6 was telling me, the type 2 contact my sister, and she really betrayed me, and she told her all this personal shit I didn't want her to know, and how dare she? And I said to the 6, well, what did the 2 say to your sister? I mean, what was this? I don't want to say it. It was just very personal. Oh, okay. That was it. And she didn't bother to tell me that the situation was, oh, by the way, I'm getting the shit beaten out of me, and the 2 was trying to help me by informing someone. She didn't tell me that because probably she knew that I would side with the 2. And so what that 6 was looking for in that moment was an alliance. She wanted me to hear her, to side with her. Now, I have noticed that this particular 6, she would get so angry at those who would downplay what she said. So when a 6 tells you they're upset about something and something is really disturbing them, you really should listen and not, oh, you're just blowing it out of proportion. That's the worst thing you can do, especially when they're in this frazzled state. You have to just sort of listen to them, entertain what they're saying, because they're always going to be imagining this like worst case scenario shit, and just be like, okay, try to think about this. And I don't know if there's anything really I could have done, because generally the 6 wants you to side with them at that time. They're really looking for that sort of support. And I remember this specific 6 used to say that she would get very angry when people would downplay what she said. So she complained about something or said she noticed something, she would get very upset and feel like betrayed. It was a betrayal. And I just thought it was interesting that when she told me about what this type 2 did, telling her sister that the 6 was with an abuser, she felt was a betrayal. But then she wouldn't even tell me what the situation was. She just wanted my approval. She wanted me to side with her. And ever since I'd known this 6, she had always been super paranoid. I mean, she'd always been paranoid about losing her job. Ever since I knew her, she was always like, I'm gonna get fired, gonna get fired, gonna get fired. Until eventually, I mean, according to the Enneagram, when I read the unhealthy 6, I was like, oh my God, that is this woman. Her self-fulfilling prophecy happened. She ended up getting fired because she was probably, she ended up not doing a no-show for work for situations I won't say, but she was doing a favors for someone. So it probably wasn't even her fault, quote unquote, but she was doing it out of loyalty. And that's one of the things I notice is just 6s, when they're unhealthy, they don't have good boundaries. And all types are this way. I'm not going to say just only 6s. All types, when they're unhealthy, have bad boundaries. But they have bad boundaries in the sense that they feel a commiseration with the people who are not good for them, people who are going to drag them down. So low lifes, quote unquote. You know what I'm saying? Like People who are just out to pull you down with them. And I think when she was hanging around with these kind of people, it made her feel a bit of superiority. And then when she was hanging around with, say, the type 2 or someone like me or her fellow coworkers or people she knew, she sort of resented that. She didn't like that she sensed any superiority or anything like that. But overall, I mean, it was unfortunate because she was a very nice person. She had a great sense of humor. She was very much 6 wing 7 self-pres, very, very warm, very funny, but just constantly falling apart. Could never show up on time, just, you know, completely disorganized. She was also an ESFP, just always on her phone, like, oh, so, you know, she would like leave work to help a friend and then get in trouble for having left work. And I remember saying to her, why are you leaving work to help a friend? You know, it would involve something like, oh, I have to go pick up my friend who's had a flat tire or something. I'm like, that's not your job. That friend has a phone, can call fucking Uber. Why is that your job? But this unhealthy 6 felt the need to extend herself. And in that sense, it's very interesting because that's where an unhealthy 6 can very much resemble an unhealthy 2. They on the surface might seem like a 2. I'm going to help and give and give and give. But the 2's motivations are, I'm going to give for love, so you give back. The 6 is giving because I feel now secure. If ever something happens to me, I can go to you. And she was also very much a constant projector. She would assume things, and it wasn't just me, but it was multiple people I work with. She would assume that, I thought when you started working here, you just really didn't like me. And I was like, why would you think that? Well, you didn't talk to me much. And it's like, I'm a fucking 4 wing 5. I don't talk to anybody till I know you, you know? But she personalized it. She thought, oh, you must not like me. You know, and there was some other things. She told me that I just assumed, she would say something, I just assumed this. I was like, I never even thought that. I don't know what you're talking about. And it's sort of like, you know, no offense, but I'm in my head. Like, I'm looking at the trees. I'm not thinking about you. Nothing personal, but I'm not thinking about you. And other aspects, moving aside from this person, I also knew an unhealthy, I mentioned in my 4 versus 5 video, an unhealthy sexual 6 wing 5, and who was a contrarian. And everything was just a disagreement, and he just felt the need to disagree with me on everything. It didn't matter if he knew nothing on the topic. It didn't matter if he didn't care about the topic. If I had a passionate opinion about something, he had to always disagree. And finally, I just got to a point where it was like, whatever, I don't care. Like, it was almost like he was constantly picking a fight. And when I first started this job, the first thing he said to me, which now in retrospect, this is why he's such a 6, and he's unhealthy and so paranoid. He says, you'll learn right away those you can trust and those you can't. And I thought this was very strange. I'm like, those who I can trust, and like, I don't go around thinking, who can I trust, who can I not? I don't think that way. I think about, as a type 4, I think about who can I relate to, who understands me and who doesn't. Because my fault is I tend to be too trusting. When someone shows that they understand me or shows that they have a bit of insight that I connect to, I gravitate towards that person, and I assume that they just get me, and that not necessarily, I shouldn't say I assume they get me, but I assume that they're going to be empathetic and at least empathize with what I say. That they're not going to be this manipulator, or that's why when, you know, it can be very painful for all types, but especially like a 4, when they encounter someone who's a narcissist that they believe who really understands them. And then that person is just a con artist. And you're like, how did you do that? Well, they're mirroring you. And 4s feel like so few people understand them. So for me, for someone to say, oh, who you can trust or not, that is totally alien to me. I don't sit here and think about trust or not. I do, when 6s are healthy, I like they tend to be have a great rapport. They tend to be very personable. They're very warm. They tend to put me at ease. They're funny, and they can get me out of sort of my, like sort of my aloof shell, I feel. And so I do very much like 6s, but, you know, as any type, when unhealthy, is a pain in the fucking ass, right? 4s included. Now, before I started this video, just gonna finish up, I had a few topics in mind. I was gonna talk about the unhealthy 4. I also want to do a video on the social 4 specifically. I also wanted to do one on my workout routine follow-up. I did a video like back in March, and I wanted to do a video on my follow-up on my weight training, which is totally unrelated. And something else, which yes, I plan to do a video on narcissists, even though my experience is just, it would be just based on my experience and my observations and where I gain my knowledge. But those are some of my thoughts with regards to unhealthy 6s. And one last comment with regards to the 6 going to 3. So this unhealthy 6-wing 7, the self-pres 6-wing 7, when she would get stressed, I would see her go to 3. And she would say things like, at my last job, I was the only one who was able to blah, 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 blah. Or she'd go up to someone and say, you know, I'm able to blah, 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 blah. And she would start to brag. And she would sort of put on this air like, I can do this, I can do this. But the difference is like a 3 does it with a charm, and a 3 manages to sort of name drop and do it in such a way and pull it off and gain the attention onto them. It's sort of like 3s have this sort of like magnet, they can swoosh everything back onto them. The 6 doing it when they've gone to 3 kind of comes off kind of pathetic. You're like, okay, I see you're doing that because you're insecure. Okay, I'm not gonna say anything because I feel sorry for you. Then if they know you feel sorry for them, then they also hate you too, which don't feel sorry for them, they don't want. And that was one of the things with this unhealthy 6. She eventually pulled away from everyone she worked with because she sensed that everyone felt sorry for her or looked down on her and this and that. And that wasn't the case with me. I can only speak for myself. But she often, you know, she had a tendency to project her negative emotions onto other people and just assume that they were feeling what she thought. And that wasn't the case. I mean, if she only asked me, I'd have told her, like, no, I'm not thinking about you. Sorry. As cold as it sounds, I'm pretty self-absorbed. I'm thinking about the trees, or when I'm gonna finish my book, and what people will say about it, and where my rank in literary history, and it has nothing to do with you. So I'll have more thoughts with regards to type 4. I just think it's so fascinating. My perspective on this, with what I have to say, and feeling with regards to how I relate in the world. And sometimes I feel like 6s are so involved in the world. There are certain types that are so into the world. They just want to be in this world. And then there are other types. Yeah, we're in it, but we're kind of standing aside. We're sort of observing it. And it'll be better when it's over, but I'm more looking for a legacy and how I fit in the long term. It's a totally different perspective. It's not, neither one is right or wrong, but I'll talk more about that in time. So that's all I want to say for right now. I'm finishing up. This video is going to be about 20 minutes long. It's a lovely Saturday afternoon on my patio. It's actually a little hot for October, but I have the trees in the background. I enjoy the aesthetics, and that's one of the reasons I like to sit out here, is just making it aesthetically pleasing, because who wants to sit inside all the time? Not me, unless it's really cold. But I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for listening.